Hello and welcome everyone to the season finale of our multi-channel commerce masterclass curriculum. And what better way to finish off an amazing series than with one half of the founding team, our CEO and co-founder, Morten Poulsen. Morten, welcome.
Thank you very much.
As you can already see, we have a slightly different format here today. We don't have a guest externally, so you're going to see only us today. There's not going to be any presentation, and there is not going to be any chat that is actually managed from us. So we're going to leave this up to you guys if you want to interact in there. If there's any questions, please put them in. We're going to follow up afterwards. But for right now, this is all about the conversation here. And the way we're going to structure this today is at the beginning, we're going to recap a little bit. There's been a lot of content and we've received a lot of feedback from you guys. So we want to just give you the golden nuggets on the series so far. And then we're going to talk to Morten a little bit about the future of e-commerce. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about Plytix as a company and about Morten's journey in the process. So, webinar number 6, all about multi-channel commerce. And if we had to give a theme for this, it's how to get to page 1. Now, with the concept of product listing optimization and PLO, we talked a lot about this, but I would like to get your take on this. Why is this so important?
Well, I think the best way to answer that question is to acknowledge the journey that e-commerce has been on. And before that, let's just embrace the fact that when we talk about e-commerce, we're talking about the fastest growing industry in the history of mankind. So e-commerce, 10 years ago when I started my career, e-commerce was quite simple. E-commerce was all about having a web store. If you had a web store, you had an e-commerce business. And then in order to have a successful e-commerce business, you needed an AdWords account or some marketing. And the whole premise was exactly the same as in the physical world. You will drive traffic to your storefront, physical or online, and then hopefully they'll convert into sales in happy days. But that is not how e-commerce is done today. E-commerce has evolved into what we like to call multi-channel commerce. And now it's not about having a web store. And if you still have a web store, it's just one of many channels. Now e-commerce has evolved into effectively managing your product information across multiple different sales channels. And each of these sales channels have different requirements for how you need to send product information. And sending product information is just half the battle won. More importantly, as you say, is ranking on these channels. I think I read a report once saying that more than 97% of all sales on Amazon happens on page 1. So all of a sudden we have this e-commerce evolving into multi-channel commerce, which is all about managing an ever-increasing number of products on an ever-increasing number of sales channels. And each of these channels becoming more and more competitive, and the fight for top position and therefore your sales is just getting more and more fierce. So ranking is everything. And managing your product listings and ranking on multiple different sites is everything if you want to compete in this multi-channel commerce universe.
And I think it's just a lot more of a crowded space out there. So it's all about standing out, right? It's not enough to be on those channels anymore. You need to separate yourself. You need to differentiate yourself on the data side as well as on the content that ultimately is going to drive the conversion. But looking back, I think 5 webinars so far, we've had a lot of super interesting things. We talked about Google, Walmart, Amazon, Facebook, and a little bit of a general overview. And I think there's so many golden nuggets, but what was the most that stood the most out for you in this series? I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time, but I'm sure there was so much knowledge in there.
Well, yeah. So Interesting question. Yeah, you're right. I've been excited about multi-channel commerce for, almost a decade now. And the cool thing about e-commerce and multi-channel commerce is that things are happening so fast. So I'll be a fool to say that I knew everything. So I myself have been very passionate viewer of these webinars, and I'm not going to lie, I learned a lot myself. What did I learn? I think if I have to point out one thing, it's the little things. It's the little tiny optimizations. I think the one that stood out the most to me was when we had that webinar with One Stone talking about Amazon and how they realized that a lot of conversion were now moving to mobile, and people didn't even read the product information anymore. It was all about, there was no scrolling. It was just watching, flicking through the images, and how they used images to, highlight the most important bullet points. So just having that one image with the bullet points, that really blew my mind. So it's these tiny small tweaks and these tiny small tricks that we've heard throughout the webinars that really blew my mind. But yeah, I'm actually more interested in knowing, what was your favorite thing? What was your main takeaway?
Wait. No. I asked the questions here. All right. Anyways, so much stuff. I really like and probably one of the things that I've heard from you guys the most is the structure actually that Dennis gave us from Google. And I mean, with your background from Google, you were probably more or less familiar with this, but there's a recipe to success, right? It's the structure of certain attributes that need to be in the title that in any other context don't really mean the same thing, but Google likes a certain way of brand together with your size, color, whatever it may be. And this is really, there's a formula to success. Now, if you do that for 10 products, that's one side. But then if you have to do that for 500,000 products at scale in a company where there's maybe only 2 people working on the content, that's impossible to do. So that was really interesting. And I really like the human component that Claire told us about from Walmart. And I think this is an often forgotten thing, because we see Amazon as this huge flagship of how e-commerce. No, Amazon. Amazon is working right now, and that creates false expectations where everything is data driven. But in a lot of retailers, it's the people behind, it's the category managers that have a lot of impact on how your products perform. So yes, there's technology, but technology is driven by people.
Yeah. No, and just to your comment there with Google, yes, it's true. I did work for Google, but as I said, it's a decade ago, and I remember I was still in Google when they launched the Google Shopping and when it came out. And back then, Google Shopping was, in all fairness, fairly simple to hack. And even I learned a lot from that webinar from Dennis, and it's really cool to see how it has evolved and how sophisticated a lot of these advertisers has become on Google Shopping. It's mind-blowing.
And I think this is another good chance to extend our gratitude. Thank you so much to Dennis, Claire, Brice, and Jimmy for joining us. You guys have been fantastic. Also, the feedback we've received. But this series was all about the lowest hanging fruit, so to speak, what everyone talks about. But as we've seen, there's emerging channels and a lot of new things happening all the time. So what the audience wants to know now, what channels would you recommend to keep an eye on? What channels, once you have the 4 ones already conquered, so to speak, what would you suggest next?
Well, that would be like asking me which football team to watch out for. It all depends on, which league, which market, which industry you're operating in. And honestly, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't foresee the future. For instance, I can give you a great example. There are certain verticals in China where more than 50% of all purchases are now happening through voice operator searches, which adds a lot of complexity to how you manage your product information, because now you have to optimize it for voice, so that is an interesting trend. Another big thing I see is social commerce. I see a lot of lines getting more and more blurry. I see, like, it used to be very simple. You have brands, you have distributors, you have resellers. Now everybody's a distributor and a brand and a reseller, and now influencers becoming, resellers or even their own brand, and then you have the social commerce to it. So very exciting times. When the dust settles, if it ever does, what will be the most successful channel? I have no clue whatsoever. But one thing is for sure, with the ever growing number of channels, with the increased complexity that each of these channels demand for product information, one thing is for certain, like the data complexity, the number of channels, the number of SKUs or products is only going to increase. And the best thing you can do right now, if you want to succeed, is, really think about product information management, and how important a role this plays. And gone are the days where product information management was about one person just uploading, product information to a web store. People have to acknowledge that it's now become a cross-department, full-scale teamwork that requires everybody in the organization. And yeah, I think that's both exciting, but also it's very scary to think about, because a lot of businesses, if they fail to adapt, it's going to be very tricky to compete.
Now, more and more channels, more and more requirements, and I've been working with a lot of partners in different verticals. The flower industry, there is the biological, the ecological kind of food industry, and it seems to be very fragmented. A lot of niche markets are kind of doing their own thing. And where do you think comes the big driver from? Is it the brands that get more responsibility on the complexity of the data, or does it fall on the retailer, or is it a third-party organization? Who do you see as the big driver behind this change for the next couple of years?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think brands and resellers, or even distributors alike, face similar challenges. I think the main driver for this change, this disruption, happens on the sales channels. And resellers, a lot of the big resellers are now migrating into becoming their own marketplace, as you mentioned, niche marketplaces. But there's also still conventional resellers that have to navigate all these different marketplaces, because they can't rely on people coming to the web store anymore. So I think the driving force in this, proliferation of data and complexity is, the main driver is the sales channels. So it's no longer matter of attracting customers to your storefront. It's about pushing your products to where your customers are. And the biggest marketplaces right now are, as we know, Walmart, eBay, and Amazon. But we have a lot of up and coming web shops that are now migrating to become a marketplace. And depending on the market and the vertical you're in, Amazon might not be the best challenge for you. You have to be on a constant lookout for all these things happening. And I think regardless of the business you're in, I think the most important thing is, keeping an eye on where do you see opportunities for your products? Where are your end users? Where can you have the highest opportunity? It's much like doing SEO. It's not enough to look at where's the traffic. It's also looking at where's the opportunity for that traffic, for my products, and then, utilize that effectively. So I think the main driver for all of this disruption happening in e-commerce is the sales channels, i.e. marketplaces. It's comparison shopping engines like Google Shopping, Facebook catalogs, and so on. And it's also this thing called social commerce. We see more and more social media platforms now allowing influencers to sell their products, and all of that is platforms. They are platforms where there's a lot of traffic, there's a lot of audience where you can push your products, and that, I think, is the main driver.
And I think it's safe to say that what works today is not necessarily going to work tomorrow, right? We see a constant change in not just keywords, channels, and also systems and processes inside of a company. And I think this is a good segue into Plytix as a company. This has been now, we just had our 6th anniversary with Plytix, and it's been a lot of pivots, changes in some features, but I think the mission has always been true. Now, if you look ahead for the next year, maybe the next 6 years, 20 years, where do you see the future of Plytix going?
Well, that should be an easy question to answer for a CEO of a company, shouldn't it? No, but I think it's important. You said it yourself. We've been around for like 6 years now. Actually, I think it's 5. No, 6, coming up on 6. You're right. And I think everybody on this call, or at least most of them, know us as a product information management system, which we are. But we actually started out as a pure analytics technology. And while just like so many other startups in the history of the world have, realized that the timing was wrong or whatever, we have undergone a pivot. But that pivot that we went through actually came from a screaming demand in the market. So back in 2017, we realized that although our analytics technology was, very attractive, we didn't see the adoption. But what we did see was, this shift towards multi-channel commerce. And we realized that in order to fully encompass multi-channel commerce as a business, you need the foundation. And you need to think about decoupling your product information management from your storefront. So we started looking into the whole PIM space. And that's where we saw that while there was a lot of, PIM players in the market, they were all focused on the same segment. They were all focused on the enterprise market. And the people we talked to for our technology were all small and medium-sized businesses. And they were all, talking about the difficulties they had with product information management. So in 2017, we decided to go all in on the PIM. And our mission was very simple. Like, we want to help the little guys. We want to build a PIM system that was affordable, it was user-friendly, with great customer support, all of the things that we believed would be ideal if we ran our own small to medium-sized retail business. And I think that was a very good move, because since we wrote our first line of code for our PIM back in December 2017, we have been seeing tremendous growth. But more importantly for me is the fact that we are actually helping the little guys. There used to be that only these fancy technologies and data were reserved for like big Fortune 5,000 companies. Now we're giving that in the hands of small and medium-sized businesses. And that to me is super important. And I've seen how important a role PIM plays for these small and medium-sized brands who are struggling to compete and keep up with these big hyperscales. So what is the future of Plytix? It's important for us that we stay true to our true mission, that we want to be there for the small and medium-sized businesses. That being said, we will not say no to a big client, but it's important. It's important for us that we design our product and we price our product at for the little guys, so that everybody, big or small, can afford powerful technologies. So while the PIM, as I see it, is the foundation for a solid multi-channel commerce strategy, it's only the beginning. Like a PIM without proper syndication capabilities, without proper analytics capabilities, will be a good PIM today, will not be a good PIM tomorrow. So the future of Plytix, what people are going to see is a lot more, direct end-to-end integrations from all the way from product information management all the way to your sales channels. May that be your, department stores and Marks and Spencers, or, directly to Amazon, or whatever it is. We need to make sure that we build a technology, a platform where you can manage your product information, syndicate it to wherever it needs to go, and also analyze on your data. So what you'll see is Plytix moving away from being a conventional PIM and into being a full-blown, multi-channel commerce platform. And although that sounds super cool, and it is, it's very easy to just put a lot of things on the roadmap and just deploy a lot of developing manpower, and then you end up having this monster of a platform. But the tricky part is, how do you do that? How do you build that monster while staying true to your core mantra of helping the little guys? Because we all know that with added complexity and added functionality, you sacrifice user friendliness. Your platform is no longer simple to use, and we will lose what's most important to us, and that is helping the little guys. So we have big visions and big dreams about where we want to move Plytix in terms of functionality. The tricky thing is, Tim, to do it while also making sure that our platform is always user friendly, and that has proven a bit tricky. And this is why we are, it's not just roadmap, deploy resources, and then go. It's a really tricky task.
And if it was easy, everyone would do it, right? So, okay, before we shift gears, you've seen it through all the series. The most important thing in all of this for us was to create content that is actionable. Nothing worse than having a webinar and at the end it's like, oh, that's nice. And then you just fall back into your kind of hamster wheel. So if you had to give one actionable advice, if our listeners, viewers, one thing that they take away as soon as they hang up from this call, what's the one thing that they should do?
Well, that's very simple. For me, it's very simple. It's about decoupling product information management from your storefront. It's about acknowledging that e-commerce has changed. E-commerce is not having a web store anymore. And even if that's your only channel, you have to acknowledge that channel needs optimized content, and you can't do that as a one-person job anymore. So you need to think product information management as a collaboration. So what we're building in Plytix, more than a PIM, more than a multi-channel commerce platform, is a collaboration tool. We need to acknowledge that all the attributes, all the information revolving around one product is not just one person managing. It's multiple different departments touching upon their own set of data, and there's a lot of overlap on data between the departments. So like the most actionable thing you can do today in order to set yourself up for the future is acknowledging this, separate product information management, dump those spreadsheets, dump the Dropbox, dump using Shopify as your central source of truth, and start, whether it's Plytix or another PIM or another software, I don't care, but really embrace the fact that you need to decouple product information management from whatever storefront you're selling on, and consider and really embrace that product information management is a dynamic process and it's teamwork.
There you have it, guys. Decouple product information management. And I think this is going full circle from this entire multi-channel commerce product listing optimization kind of theme that we've been running here. Because if you don't do that as the first step, you're not going to be able to manage all of those big channels and all the, 200 attributes per product per channel kind of thing, or something like that on average. You need to put a system in place, otherwise you set yourself up for failure. Now I want to completely shift away from, I don't think you can shift away from multi-channel commerce at all while connecting Plytix with that. It's so deep ingrained in the DNA, but I want to change topics a little bit and talk a little bit more about your journey at Plytix. And I think the very first thing, there's an ever growing, ever ongoing kind of conversation when they play word bingo here in the office. The one conversation we have, whether it's with prospects, clients, investors, the name Plytix. Obviously it's Plytix, but what's the story behind that?
Well, that depends. Do you want the real story or do you want the official story?
You choose.
Right. So as I said, Plytix started out as a pure analytics play, and the name Plytix, pronounced Plytix, is from product analytics, because that's what we did. We wanted to go in and disrupt the e-commerce industry by creating the first analytics tool in the world that could track, the performance of your product. But not only that, we wanted to give brands the opportunity to track their product performance on third-party websites or marketplaces, so that they could actually see analytics data on their product when the end users were interacting with them. So yeah, that's the official story. The real story is a bit more different, and yeah, I'll tell the story. So finding a name for a startup is always tricky, and we've been having at it. We could never agree, and I think it was a weekend where one of my good friends, my former flatmate from Dublin, Rudolf, we lived together when we worked in Google, and he came visiting us, and I was telling him that, hey, we can't find a name, and he was one suggesting that we took a more data-driven approach to finding a name. So that night we actually went home and we started crawling, all different crowdfunding platforms for names and a lot of attributes. We made a list of all the companies that have been successfully funded or been listed on stock exchanges, and we started analyzing data to see if there was some kind of trend we could see. And the first thing we saw was names with 2 syllables perform significantly better than if you have 1 or 3 or so on and so forth. So that went on and posted up on the big whiteboard. And the next thing we realized was, a company started with a P or a T had performed significantly better on crowdfunding the last 6 months. And, long story short, there was a lot of alcohol involved, and 5 o'clock in the next morning, we had a lot of post-its on the thing. I'm not sure about the math anymore because, as I said, it was one of those nights. But at the end, we were just looking at the board, and then we just saw that, ending had to be X or LE. We saw it had to start with a P, 2 syllables, and that's when we what about Plytix? And then we just changed it into an official story of product analytics, but it has nothing to do with it. It was it was a couple of guys, getting drunk and hacking the best name.
It was a lucky coincidence. I think that the story sounds a lot better, and people will never forget once we say it comes from product analytics. I think it makes a lot of sense. Very cool. So there you hear it, guys. Forever solved. Plytix, Plytix, because data. And because they're drunk. Because drunk data, even better. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Morten Poulsen. With your track record, I mean, former youth national team player in football, black belt in Taekwondo, soldier for the army in Iraq, ex-Googler. Yet with your profile, compared to most of the founders, we don't really see you out on the stage. You're not really active in social media. It took me forever to convince you to have this interview here. Why is that?
Oh, that's a good question. And you know the answer to it. But yeah, for me, it's just, I think what we're building here in Plytix is quite unique. And I think that the culture we've built and this whole movement we're building around, helping SMBs, compete against the hyperscales, this is bigger than any one person. And I talk a lot to other founders and investors, and there's always a topic about, personal branding, about the CEO has to be associated with the company, and I just disagree. If this was so top driven, it was all me, we wouldn't be here today. And I think it's important that, for me at least, that Plytix is bigger than me on any other individual. So that is why I've decided that I don't want to do these things. I don't want to be on stages. I don't want to, be in, newspapers and whatnot. If anyone wants to do a piece on Plytix, it has to be on Plytix and not on me.
Well, on the positive side, you get to see me a lot more in front of the camera, which is, I don't know, good or bad. You guys decide. I know we're already pretty much running into the half hour here, but I have a couple more questions actually leading up to this. I asked our team to ask if they have any questions that they always wanted to ask you. So I collected 3 questions actually that I would like to finish up with. If you guys have to run, obviously, but I think it's going to be interesting. The first one that I have, I'm not going to tell you who said it, but the first one is, if you wouldn't be the CEO of Plytix, what would you do right now?
Right now, I'd probably take half a year and set up my own sustainable house farming and not touch a computer for 6 months.
All right, and after those 6 months?
I don't know, become a kite surfing instructor or something. I don't know. I think after 6 months, I'll probably be dying to get back into it. I'm really passionate about what I do. I love Plytix. I love where this is going. I love online and especially multi-channel commerce. So, like, yeah, 6 months, and I'll probably get back to it.
Then it would be itching in your fingers. Maybe create your own e-commerce store?
Direct to consumers, I think.
Direct to consumer. All right, that's actually the perfect segue into the next question. If you know, at Plytix right now, you may have seen it, we are creating our own Plytix swag store. Thank you, Haley, for this beautiful t-shirt, but that's a different story. If you were to create your own direct to consumer store, what would you sell?
Surf shorts. I like kite surfing, and I'm pretty fed up with the way that, traditional surf shorts are designed. First of all, at some point they stopped making those surf shorts down below your knees, which I really liked. And the other thing is I don't think they are designed for, waterproof smartphones and kite surfing. They don't have enough stretch in it. And so I would design surf shorts for kite surfing and for the modern world.
All right. One last question. What song do you sing under the shower?
That's pretty easy. It's Shania Twain, Man, I Feel Like a Woman.
There you have it, guys. Morten Poulsen is Shania Twain in the shower. What a great way to finish this incredible series. Morten, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for tuning in the last 6 webinars. It's been a great pleasure. There's going to be a lot more. We actually have the next series planned already, where we're going to dive deeper into the entire e-commerce technology stack, where we're inviting different technology providers to talk about the differences between PIM and all the different tools in the market, to give you guys a better understanding, to help you find out what is out there, what do you need, what should you be looking out for when looking for other systems. More news on that soon. Thank you very much for tuning in. Have a fantastic summer. And if you have any questions, as always, please feel free to reach out. Otherwise, see you guys in the next series. Bye-bye.